There are a lot of ways to retouch an image. Where on earth do you start? In this video, I'm going to show you how to use 3 different retouching tools, and in what situations you would want to use one tool over the other. Let's get started. If you'd like to follow along with me, I've left a download link for today's photo in the video description. And from that same link, you can also download a visual graphic that recaps everything we'll learn about in this video. The 3 retouching tools that we'll be talking about in this video are the Inpainting Brush tool, the Clone Brush tool, and the Healing Brush tool. I'll show you how to use each one of these tools and the pros and cons of using one tool over the other. Let's start with my favorite tool, the Inpainting Brush tool. This tool is a little gem. It's super easy to use. Let me show you. You can find the Inpainting Brush tool over here. I'm going to click on this little gray triangle to open up this menu to see all of these retouching tools we could use. I'll click on the Inpainting Brush tool. Before I begin using this tool, I'm going to make a few adjustments. First, I'm going to add a new pixel layer that I can paint on top of. Instead of painting directly on my photo, painting on a new layer like this will make sure that I can always erase what I've done and it won't destroy my original image. Now, because I've added a new pixel layer, I also need to change it from current layer to current layer and below so that our inpainting tool can sample from all of our layers, not this blank pixel layer, but it can pull information from our original photo. Alright, with that out of the way, we can now begin to use this Inpainting Brush tool. To use this tool, all you need to do is paint over an area, and it will use surrounding information to fill in that area. Sometimes you might need to paint a few times to get rid of a blemish, but this tool usually does a great job at removing these little blemishes that you can see. Because it's pulling surrounding information, you don't need to tell it where to sample from. All you need to do is paint and it will quickly remove anything that you paint over. I can turn my layer off to see the before, and here's the after with just doing a little bit of inpainting. Now, the pros of using this tool include that this tool is super easy to use. As you can see, all you need to do is paint. And another pro is that it generally does a great job at removing blemishes. You usually don't need to paint too many times over an area before the blemish is completely removed. Now, this tool is not perfect. I want to show you that this tool can actually be pretty bad in a few situations. The first one is edges. Up here, if I wanted to remove some of the blemishes from the lip and skin area, just right in between them, it does an okay job, but if you look right here, it's actually filled in extra lip where there wasn't lip before. And then over here, it took some of the lip away. As you can see, edges can be confusing for the Inpainting Brush tool. This also brings up the other con I wanted to talk about. You don't get to choose what gets filled in, so sometimes your area might not look exactly how you want. Luckily, if you don't like how something looks, you can always select the Eraser tool, and then erase over the area to make it look the same as it originally was. Next, let's talk about the Clone Brush tool. This tool is found over here. It looks like a stamp. I'll click on it to select it. And then I'll make sure I'm still on a separate pixel layer from our background. And I'll change it to current layer and below. This tool works a little bit differently. It lets you sample an area and then paint an exact copy of that area somewhere else. To sample an area, all you need to do is hold down Alt and click somewhere with good skin, and then you can copy that skin onto another area. You can see that the crosshairs move with your paintbrush. But even though it moves with the paintbrush, I still like to sample multiple source points as I go to make sure that I'm in control of where I'm sampling. So as I paint, I keep my finger on the Alt key and I keep sampling new areas as I go. Now, the pros of this tool is that you have great control. You get to sample whatever you want and fill it in. This tool is also my preferred tool when working with edges. If we come back down to the lip, because we can sample exactly an area that we want to fill in, this tool does a much better job. However, here's one con with this tool. It doesn't always blend very well. You can see that we have darker skin over here and lighter skin over here, and we don't really have a middle transition area. So the area isn't looking perfect. Because of this edit doesn't look very good. So I'm going to use my eraser to erase that. Because that didn't work out so well, I want to show you one more example of using the clone brush on edges. Let's say I don't like how wrinkled his shirt is right here, and I want to smooth that out. I can do that by sampling an edge up here. Then I can paint in that edge down here. You can see the before and after of that, and you can see that the clone brush usually does a pretty good job at edges. Now, I already showed you one con, that the areas might not blend very well. One other con is that using this tool is a little bit slower than the inpainting tool, because you need to keep holding down Alt and sampling different areas as you paint. Now it's time to tackle our last tool, the healing brush tool. I'll be honest with you, the healing brush tool is a bit of a booger. It took me a while to get the hang of it, because sometimes it works a little unpredictably. I'll select the healing brush by coming to our Inpainting Brush and then clicking on the little gray triangle, and then selecting the healing brush tool. The purpose of this tool is to sample an area, and then it will copy the texture of what you sampled and apply it somewhere else. I'll show you what I mean over here. The texture of the chin has a bumpy skin texture, while the texture of the neck is soft and slightly blurred. If I sampled this area by holding Alt and clicking, and then paint it down here on the neck, well, I just made a mistake. I'm going to make sure current layer and below is turned on. Then, with that part of the chin sampled, if I paint on the neck, you can see that the texture was transferred over, but the redness of the chin stayed on the chin, and we still have the light color of the neck. I could do the opposite by sampling the soft texture of the neck and then painting it over the chin. And you can see that the colors don't match, but the texture does. Because this tool does such a great job blending textures, if you ever have an area with some weird texture, you can sample a nearby area and then paint over it. By using this technique, you get to keep the original colors that are on your image. You're just changing the texture of the area. So, a pro to using this tool is that this tool does a great job with blending textures. However, for cons, this tool can be a little unpredictable. While it usually just samples the texture, not the color, sometimes it brings the color over as well. You can clearly see this if I sample the eye and then paint over here. It's not just pulling the texture of the eye, but the colors as well. Because of this, I typically use this tool for skin or areas with pretty consistent coloring. That way the tool can blend well, which is its original purpose. Alright, so at this point, I've told you a bunch about all of these tools. You know how to use the tools and pros and cons of each of these 3 tools. So, knowing all of this, where do you start? Well, when retouching, I personally always start with the Inpainting Brush tool. This tool is by far the easiest to use, the fastest, and generally does a great job. But I want to show you that sometimes this tool might not work for certain situations. So here's a few problems that you might have with the Inpainting Brush, and what tool you should use to fix it. Problem number 1 is that after inpainting, the area has lost texture. This can happen if you need to paint over a large area. Once I did that, you can see that the area is looking a little bit blurrier and out of focus than it should be. So, because of this, instead of using the Inpainting Brush in this case, I would use the Healing Brush tool, because this tool is meant for blending textures, and by using this tool, you can still get good results of removing blemishes without completely destroying the original texture. You can see that that looks a bit better. We still have some bumpy texture there that was originally part of the image. The next problem that you might get with your Inpainting Brush is that your edges can become distorted after using it. For example, if I want to straighten out this curve of his shirt, and I paint over it, you can see that it's become straighter, but the area is looking a little strange. If this happens with distorted edges, I would say the best solution is to use the Clone Brush tool. Then you can sample an area and fill in that area however you want, giving you a little bit more control. Not only is this area looking straighter, but we've been able to sculpt exactly how we want it to look by sampling areas with the Clone Brush tool. The next problem that you might get while using the Inpainting Brush is that an area might start to look smudgy with colors and texture looking off. This can be a hard problem to fix. If you've painted over an area and it just isn't looking quite right, the colors are off, the texture doesn't look good, This is a hard problem. In this case, first undo what you've done. Then, I would turn first to the clone brush tool so that you can sample exact areas and fill them in. This prevents smudginess because you're not sampling a smudgy area to begin with. Once the area is looking cleared up, you might be missing some texture, and if that happens, I would suggest pulling out your healing brush tool to fill in that texture. I'll sample an area with more texture, and then bring it over. Now this is still looking fuzzy to me, so I might turn to an area like this that has more texture and bring that in. You can see the before and after of that, and how adding a little more texture afterward can make a difference. Now, using all of the tools that I just explained, I want to show you an edit that I did with this image. Here's the before and the after. I completed this edit only using the Inpainting Brush, the Clone Brush, and the Healing Brush tools. However, you can use a lot more retouching techniques to really make this image look great. Just to give you a little teaser of what that could look like, here's the before image again. And here's the after of a complete retouch that I did of this image. And here's all the images side by side. Understanding the retouching tools is so important, but there are still so many techniques that I would love to share with you. For that, you can check out my retouching course, Retouching 101. This course is designed to give you a great workflow to retouch your images from start to finish. I'll leave that course linked in the video description. Thanks for watching, my friends, and I'll see you in the next Affinity Revolution tutorial.